Let's face it, getting ghosted when you're calling your real estate leads absolutely sucks. It hurts. It's really, really demoralizing. And at the end of the day, it makes you just want to give up. But the other thing that more importantly, it makes you very unprofitable, especially if you're paying money for these leads. Because let's face it, every lead that ghosts you and you don't get to the closing table is increasing your cost per acquisition. So in this video, I'm going to give you 7 tips of things that you can do to help stop people from ghosting you. And these aren't just going to be things that you do in the initial call, but it starts with before the initial contact, and then during the initial contact, and then in the follow-up after the initial contact. So first of all, let's talk about before the initial contact. Over the last couple of years, I've had the honor to consult with some really big teams and brokerages in the real estate industry when it came to their lead generation processes. One thing that I've learned is if they're seeing a lot of agents who are getting ghosted, it probably has a lot to do with where those leads are coming in. And a big part of that is really failing to define who your target audience is very early on. So if you don't know how to do that, I have another video on that. I stole something from Russell Brunson about defining your target audience. I think it's a great video. I'll link it here somewhere, but go check it out. So if you fail to define that target audience early on, you're going to have problems down the road. So really get specific. All too often when I'm talking to agents and team leaders, I'm like, who is your target audience? And they normally will say, well, I want to target sellers in this specific market. Well, that's too general. You need to really screw that down and really target who you're trying to reach with that specific marketing campaign or lead generation campaign or whatever it is. Number 2 kind of goes along with it, and it's more catered towards pay-per-click or specific campaigns. But a lot of times if you're having issues with retention after the first phone call and people ghosting you, it goes back to this. And it's that your campaign itself is way too broad. So kind of like I talked about in the first one, when you don't define your target market and then you run a campaign, it's really hard to be specific to a specific pain point or a specific person if you don't have a defined market. So then you run a campaign that's very broad and very general. And a lot of the times that looks like, sellers in X market, or are you looking to sell your home in Portland, Oregon, for example? That's way too broad. It's way too hard to, in the next step, when you're actually on the phone, build rapport with very broad campaigns like that, because it really makes it difficult to personalize it and find the pain points that seller is actually going through and the reason that they actually want to put their house on the market. So that brings us to the next section, the actual phone call itself. The third tip here is all too often agents go into making these phone calls, especially with leads, having a predetermined mindset of what a win is. So ultimately, if you're calling these leads and your only objective is, hey, I need to get an appointment today, that's not necessarily how you should be looking at it. Yeah, that might be your goal, but that can't be your only objective. So all too often, I see agents that are calling with one objective in mind, and when the lead deviates or doesn't want to do that, it spins them out and it just becomes a disaster. So do not go into these phone calls with any leads having a predetermined win in mind that you need in order for this to be a win in your database. Number 4, and I see this all the time, and it's an agent's over-reliance on their sales scripts. Now, if you guys have been watching me for a while, you understand my thought on sales scripts and why I don't like them at all. But this is really where ghosting really takes life of its own, is when agents are relying on their sales script, because kind of like the one before this where there's a predetermined outcome that they're looking for, when they're so reliant on their sales script, it really puts that whole conversation in a box. And the second that the lead deviates from that sales script, it goes downhill very quickly. The other thing on the other end of the line, let's face it, these people that we're talking to now and the leads that we're getting, they've seen the sales script. They're all over the internet. There's no wow factor to them anymore. So you're really not differentiating yourself. And most likely this lead, you're not the first agent that's talked to them on the phone. Maybe you are, but probably not. So if you're over relying on that sales script, it's going to sound very generic, and you're not going to once again build really any rapport. And most likely the other agents they talk to have probably used that sales script or something very similar if you guys are in the same market. So ditch the sales script, build a relationship, and talk to people like people. Number 5, and this is the last one when we're talking about during the initial contact, and that is If you have a defined audience and a defined campaign, then this one becomes very important. And it's, are you relevant to what you're talking about with this person on the phone, to why they came into your sales funnel? So here's an example. If you are running an ad for sellers in the Portland, Oregon market, right? So you know they want to sell their house. You need to stay relevant to that on the first phone call. Now, once you've earned the right to start asking other questions and moving outside of that, that's fine. But normally that's not in the very first phone call. All too often what I see is agents will get someone in like a seller funnel, and then they'll start asking about, well, where are you going to buy? What are you going to do? Now, those questions are important, yes, down the road, but not in the initial contact. Really, for me, I really like to, on the initial contact, focus on one thing. Try to find one pain point, like with a seller. Try to find the one reason that they need to sell their house, because that's going to be more important than trying to figure out where they're going to move to, what the next step is, and all that type of stuff. That stuff can come later, but first you need to solve the problem that they came to you for. All too often we have this really bad disease in real estate where we just like to talk about ourselves, and we forget, like, the lead came to us to solve a problem. People do not just search on the internet or wherever, however they found you, for funsies. They're searching for a real estate agent because they have a specific problem that they need to fix. So focus on that. Figure out, obviously, if the marketing that you did that got them to come to you was relevant to their specific pain point. Keep your conversation relevant to that pain point as well, because that's probably one of the reasons that they came to you, and that's a problem that they want you to solve, not what the next steps are 3 months down the road or any of that. There's a time for that later, but you have to earn the right to get to that. Okay. Now we're going to go into after the initial contact and the follow-up. And the sixth point here is your follow-up itself is way too generic. And this is how it plays out normally, especially in a large team or an agent who's very busy. They have an initial phone call with the person. It goes really, really well. And then they put the person in their CRM, and next thing you know, their CRM is nurturing that client. Now, there's a couple issues with this. First of all, especially with all the disclosures and everything now, when it comes to text messages and emails and all that type of stuff, people understand that's not you. You're not providing any value specifically personalized to them. They understand it's a robot, it's your computer. So ultimately, too broad, too general, doesn't matter. Once again, we need to hit that pain point of the problem that they want you to solve. That's how your follow-up should be based. Once again, until you earn the right to start asking those other questions, you really shouldn't be deviating a whole lot from that. Now, yeah, if you want to do some market updates and everything, that's fine. But when we generally start deviating, especially with a computer, stuff really goes downhill. And that is one of the things that I think where we see agents get ghosted the most is after the initial contact, and then right after that when they start doing the follow-up. Because what happens is you'll have a good conversation. That lead is going to go, man, he's a cool guy. He can solve my problems. And then the very next piece of contact they get from you is from your CRM or an email that's automated or something along those lines. And they're going to go, oh, this guy doesn't even have time for me. Like, he just blew me off. You know, we had a good conversation, but he doesn't have time to really help me with the problem that I needed to have solved. So those, especially the first follow-ups, really need to be personalized. I would really highly recommend it's personal text messages. You know, hey, we had that conversation a couple weeks ago. I saw this article and it reminded me of your situation. I just wanted to send you a quick text because I thought it would provide value. Things like that. Things are going to be hyper sensitive to that person and their pain point that they want you to solve. They don't want to know how you're solving other people's problems. They don't want to know about your just solds, your just listed. They don't care at this point. Now, at some point, yes, once again, at some point, that authority piece becomes important, but not right now. You don't need all that right now. Right now, you just need to follow up relevant to the reason that they found you with the pain points that they want you to fix. This is another important one. I see this all the time. So number 7 is just assuming that they ghosted you. All too often, I'll talk to agents that have a really good initial contact. They have some good follow-up back and forth, and then they send a text that goes unresponded to. And immediately, like, the client ghosted me. What do I do? It's like, well, you had a good phone call. You had some good follow-ups. Realistically, they're probably not just going to fall off the face of the earth. Now, it does happen sometimes, but ultimately, what I see all too often is agents just assume I just got ghosted and then stop. They pull back. They're like, I got ghosted. I'm moving on. A lot of times that's not the case. Keep going, keep providing value to these people. A lot of times what's going to happen is that person's going to text you back later if you hit them up with another text and say, hey, sorry, I forgot to get back to you on that last one. Life's been busy. Let's face it, most of the time when there's a real estate transaction that's going on, it's because of a much bigger life event that causes a lot of stress. So, people normally don't just move because they want to. They normally move because they have to for one reason or another. And those reasons are normally highly stress based. So job changes, marital status changes, new children in the family, kids leaving, empty nesters, all those type of things have a ton of stress wrapped around them. So all too often I see agents that are like, oh, I got ghosted and that's it. It's not it. Just keep going, keep providing value. And now if you lose them for a couple months, maybe you can have that conversation with yourself. But ultimately, I see it all too often where after one or two text message or phone calls that don't go through, they just assume they're ghosted and they move on. So at the end of the day, ultimately, if you can do these things, your rate of getting ghosted, I think, is going to go down quite a bit. And at the end of the day, what's super important is, remember, provide value. My 2 rules in real estate lead generation are provide so much value to people when they don't need you, that when they do need you, it would be absolutely crazy for them to use somebody else. And number 2 is be so good at number 1 that they just can't ignore you.